What makes a good adaptation? This has been a question many have asked for years, and film and television has spent the better part of several decades adapting various stories. Whether it was books or comics, some of the most famous films and franchises in history exist off of the back of adaptation of written works. So when film companies started to make TV shows and movies based on video games, those responsible for making them had a fundamental disconnect on how to properly adapt them. This is for many reasons. Sometimes it's just a cash grab. Other times, the thing they're trying to adapt doesn't really work as a movie. Or you're just trying to exploit German tax code in order to make crappy movies to get a return on your investment. But the main thing I believe is that video games are a relatively new medium, and that video games, while being story-driven in many aspects, are also gameplay-driven as well, meaning a lot more things can be conveyed to the viewer than just through storytelling. And many people do not understand this, especially those in the film industry like, say, Roger Ebert, who is well known to say that video games are not art, and this has been a common viewpoint from the film industry for years. So now, when we actually get adaptations that expand upon or even improve their source material, it gave me hope that one day a Halo TV show or movie could get made. After all, if Sonic could get a decent movie, why can't Halo? So when we finally got news that a Halo TV show was actually getting made after rumors of various different showrunners or scripts being thrown around just fell through, I was incredibly excited. And Season 1, while having its problems, was more forgettable than bad to me. And honestly, it wasn't wholly terrible, it just was pretty bland. Season 2, however, just broke me. It not only shows a severe lack of understanding and awareness from those at the head, it's just a total mess, along with it not being the primer to the series that it wants to be. It's just another sci-fi show wearing the skin of a franchise it doesn't even understand. The main issues with Season 1 can be summed up as a complete meandering mess. The plot threads it focused on jumped all over the place in ways that didn't make any sense, and characterization for many legacy characters that people love was just off. Chief was fundamentally wrong on so many levels, and changes to how the Forerunners worked in regards to only select humans being reclaimers called Blessed Ones versus all of humanity would create massive plot holes that I will address later. Spartans not knowing their origins and having Chief going AWOL along with him never wearing his helmet was also a terrible choice. McKee, her entire character arc and existence is just bad, including her relationship with Chief, and that's as much as I want to say on that subject. Quan and the insurrectionist subplot is just distracting as well. It wasn't well paced, and I just didn't enjoy it. All of these things left viewers, including myself, feeling dejected and disappointed. So when Season 2 actually seemed to course correct, with all the marketing indicating that the season would focus on the fall of Reach, I was actually excited. Not necessarily super hyped, but certainly more optimistic. Maybe let the Spartans do their thing and tell a more focused story. It didn't need to be a one-to-one adaptation, it just needed to feel authentic and feel right. And we got none of that. In fact, it simultaneously got better and worse at the same time. In terms of positives, the season started off quite strong. The Covenant actually seemed to be a threat. The glassing scene was wonderful, and the Spartans were actually acting like Spartans. Chief kept his helmet on for the most part, and Colonel Ackerson, portrayed by Joseph Morgan, was literally perfect. I have nothing but good things to say about Joseph Morgan's portrayal. He obviously did his homework, and it really shows because he's easily the best part of this entire season. It was good. It wasn't necessarily the greatest thing, but it was better. It was a genuine, measured improvement. And then halfway through the season, it started to show to me that we were going to be getting more of the same, as the Fall of Reach was no longer the central plot of the season, as it happens over the course of one episode. And while I understand why they did that, at least in terms of the story that they were trying to tell, not a good story, but it's one to tell, I think it was a massive mistake. But the main thing that started to indicate to me that there was a problem is the fact that McKee is still alive. No, in case you're wondering, they do not address how she is still alive. She's just there, and we have to deal with it. Somehow, McKee returned. Also, Keyes, now an admiral, sacrifices himself to let Chief and some others get away from the planet of Reach, along with the Spartan Vanek who dies during the battle. And to be honest, the fact that Keyes and a Spartan character who I actually really like just died in the most nothing burger of ways just felt like a massive insult. And the more and more these small but needless changes would pop up, the more and more I would just get dejected and annoyed with this series. And it continued to get worse, because immediately after this, Chief doesn't find the ring, but the next two episodes are just side quests. I'm baffled, because instead of, say, hey, following up on the tension that it was trying to create, John, Soren, Kwan Ha, Soren's wife, and then Halsey just run around on a random planet trying to find Soren's son who had gotten kidnapped. One of the Spartans of Silver Team, Riz, decides to stay on the planet because she's having an identity crisis or something, and her character just disappears from the entire series. And then Kai begins training Spartan 3s, which seems cool until you realize that these Spartan 3s are basically just UNSC Marines in SPI armor. And after this, the rest of the group goes to the planet Onyx, where the Spartan 3s are being trained. And also, in case you're wondering where Cortana is, because Cortana hasn't been mentioned at all up until this point, Cortana has been kidnapped by the Covenant after being used by Colonel Ackerson for something I can't really remember, to be honest. It was kind of boring, and just, she didn't really show. Cortana is not really part of this series whatsoever. And the Covenant have a human AI, and for some reason, Cortana does not decide to self-delete, as per the Cole Protocol. You know, the thing that kept Earth's location hidden for most of the Human Covenant War? But hey, let's just ignore that, because I don't know. And then on Onyx, Kai and Chief reunite, and Ackerson realizes Oni's real intentions for the Spartan 3s being cannon fodder, and warns Chief and Kai about it. But then Halsey, Kwan, and Miranda Keyes begin to investigate some Forerunner ruins on Onyx. And in the lore, Onyx is a Forerunner shield world. But Kwan begins having visions of monsters, because she's psychic now. He was teased in Season 1, but I guess now she is a glorified psyker in everything but name, and discovers a Forerunner lab. They find a device containing Forerunner research, which apparently includes flood spores. And this is where my brain turned off and had to reset, because while Forerunner shield worlds have been used to house flood spores and constructs for research, they are separate from the Halo rings. So them finding flood spores on Onyx is possible, but that's not my issue. It's the fact that this is where the Flood get revealed, and it's fucking stupid. And what's even worse is that we haven't even set foot on the Halo ring yet. But wait, it gets worse, because they do the alien thing, where they take the obviously bad thing they shouldn't touch, and bring it back to the Oni base on Onyx, because, hey, that's a good idea. And then some lab tech just decides to mess up, and then a flood outbreak happens, because yeah, and also the Flood in this show function more like Resident Evil T-virus zombies in the Flood. Admittedly, when you actually have combat forms that look like the Flood, they actually do a really good job visually, and sound-wise, it's really, really cool, because you get to hear, like, bones cracking and stuff like that. It's really gross, but it's done really well. But the CG is a bit wonky, and overall, the fact that they're just more T-virus zombies with extra globbly-gook is just not great. And then the UNSC fleet fights a giant Covenant fleet to get to the Halo ring. Of course, there's a flood outbreak going on, and then Kai, during the space battle over the Halo ring, decides to drive a Covenant Corvette into a capital ship, which honestly is the best thing that happens this season, because of the fact that Kai is quite literally my favorite character in this show. And honestly, it's sad to see her go, because she's genuinely the only character that really felt like a Spartan. Chief lands on the ring with Cortana, Chief meets with McKee, and then fights the Arbiter, kills the Arbiter, and then McKee goes into this Forerunner facility, and then Chief is seen talking with someone, and it turns out to be what looks like 343 Guilty Spark. I'm pretty sure it's 343 Guilty Spark. And then the season just ends there. And I'm gonna be honest, this was just awful. I mean, the first half wasn't bad, but the last half of the season just got progressively just worse and worse. And the last episode is easily the worst offender for me, because all of these elements, the Battle of Reach, the Halo rings, the Flood, these are all really great elements. But it almost feels like someone decided to put them all in a hat and roll the hat around, and then just draw them out at random, and then say, hey, this is the order we're going in, even though the order is wrong and doesn't make any sense. The season, in short, butchered the Fall of Reach, made the Master Chief never wear his armor, because, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, for a good few episodes, like say during the Battle of Reach, Chief isn't wearing his armor due to plot contrivance. So now not only is he not wearing his helmet, he's also not wearing his armor. Nice. McKee is alive, the Halo rings being discovered is a mess, and overall, it's just not good. It's painful. And honestly, this is why when you adapt something, you need to understand the rules of the thing you are adapting. If you tried to adapt Lord of the Rings and removed the concept of Sauron elves or dwarves and just made the bad guy Gollum, it wouldn't work because it wouldn't be an effective story. Here, removing everything and then changing it all around and making changes that you don't understand the ramifications of makes more problems than there needs to be. And none of them create bigger problems than that of how Master Chief is portrayed. Here, he is a hollow, just incredibly unlikable character. He's mean, and I don't mean like mean in the sense where he's like, oh, he's a tough guy that fight. No, he's just unlikable. He's just rude. Honestly, he reminds me more of like Greg Heffley in a power armor suit than Master Chief. In the novels, he would look at this guy and lay him out flat. Like, this isn't even the same character. This is more like a bad run of Commander Shepard than anything else. And I can't buy this version of Master Chief as that character. And this is not an insult to Pablo Schreiber. He does a good job with what he's given, and he's also quite a good actor. The issue is that the role he's playing is not the character he's supposed to be portraying. And even in the games when Chief got away from who he was supposed to be, which, by the way, I do not have a problem with humanizing the Master Chief, like say in Halo 4, that was really, really good, and even in the books and stuff like Halo Collateral Damage and everything else, that was all fine. That all felt like a natural progression for the character in other parts we didn't usually see. But with this series, it seems like they're just going to dig the hole more and more and more before eventually not anyone is going to watch it. And I'm going to be honest, the most egregious error happens in the last 10 minutes of the 8th episode. Because Chief, after landing on the ring with Cortana, has a bit of a weird conversation with her because she starts talking about how it almost felt like all of this was waiting for him, and that the ring was waiting for him, and that all of this was building towards his role in the universe and his destiny and whatever. And I'm going to be honest, the way this was conveyed made the plasma cutter instructions in the original Dead Space seem nuanced. And for those who don't know, there's a concept in Halo called the Mantle of Responsibility. This mantle is the one that the Forerunners adopted after they defeated the Precursors, or the Precursors ran away. Not really explained, and I also haven't read Halo Epitaph yet, so I'm not really sure what's up to date with that happened. What I do know is that the mantle itself was created by the Precursors as an avenue for other species to take their role in the galaxy and further its overall progression. Humanity was the ones that were supposed to ascend to the mantle. Master Chief is heavily implied to have a literal chosen one thing in the games, because in Halo 4, there's this one cutscene where the Librarian explains that everything was built towards him having his armor and this and that or whatever, that he was supposed to play a very similar role that the Didact did. And I'm not even going to lie, if you're trying to set up the fact that Chief is basically a chosen one, which keep in mind, he's already a blessed one that can interact with Forerunner tech, which that already creates another can of worms. It's just like, why are you doing this now? I mean, in the games, we had about 10 years worth of books and then 5 games to build up to that concept before it really even was a concept. And now you're just throwing it out? Just, hey, why not? It's such a terrible idea. It doesn't work, and it just feels insulting and just unfocused. It's almost like they were trying to rush it. And what's even worse is that the Mantle of Responsibility as a concept is the entire reason why the Human Covenant War happens to begin with. Because the Covenant and the Prophets thought that they were the ones who were going to ascend to the Mantle. And in the lore, originally, all humans were Reclaimers. All of them could interact with Forerunner technology. But now the fact that they're, quote, blessed ones, who only certain people can interact with them, and this seems to be common knowledge amongst the Covenant, why does the Covenant still exist? Because if the Forerunners did not want the aliens to have the responsibility and be part of the mantle, they wouldn't have it. So they didn't. And the entire reason why the Human Covenant War happened was because of the fact that the Prophets discovered the fact that the humans were the one who were supposed to ascend to the mantle, not the aliens. So in order to preserve that secret, they decided to exterminate all of humanity. So how does the Covenant even exist in this timeline? Because when the Covenant did learn at large that they were lied to, it resulted in the Great Schism. You know, the thing that brought the end of the Covenant and allowed humanity to actually win the war. So, I don't know. This is a massive plot hole. The entire show's existence and concepts create a plot hole. And the fact that no one decided to correct this, that no one saw that this was going to create problems, which honestly, if you tried to fix, would only create more problems, just shows that no one knows what they're doing with this. Nobody knows where to put what, and nobody knows the significance of the change that they make. It's just a watered-down, pathetic recreation of a story I adore for the sake of drawing in an audience that didn't want to watch this to begin with and alienate those who would. It's this jumbled mess of ideas that is consistently inconsistent. And Halo, in all honesty, is one of video games' best franchises that has a very well adaptable story. It is very clearly laid out. It is not hard to do. The Peter Jackson Halo movie script would have been fucking amazing if that got made. And he understood that. Neil Blomkamp understood that when he wrote Halo Landfall and then later on went on to make District 9. There are people in this industry who understand this franchise. The people at the head of this show aren't one of them. And if they do understand it, are intentionally trying to change it, they're a part of the problem. It is heartbreaking, frustrating, and I know I sound like a fanboy right now, just mindlessly yelling at my screen, but it's worthy to say that it doesn't work. And when you have a lack of respect or want to actually adapt something you want to make, do not be surprised when fans push back. And I will admit, before this, I was kind of skeptical, but now I have no real good thing to say about this show. If there is a season 3, I'm not gonna watch it, and this is where my time with it ends, because I was willing to give this a chance, and I got burned twice, and I don't want to get burned again. I'm just gonna go back to Halo the Master Chief Collection again and read the Ghost of Onyx book again, because that's what makes me happy, and this show just makes me feel more of a headache than actual happiness. I know this is a bit of a different video, and I don't tend to talk about TV shows or movies very much on this channel, but this show bothered me so much that I felt like I needed to say something. Thank you all very much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video, as ranty as it was. Next week, we are back with our normal lore stuff, but until then, thank you all very much for watching. If you would like to support the channel, please consider becoming a member, and thank you very much to the YouTube members for supporting the channel. It really does mean the world to me. Thank you all very much for watching. Have a great night.